Hey guys, what's up? It's Duncan, KH fan. I felt like doing this video for a top 20 metal albums of 2011, mainly because I've been watching a lot of album reviews this year, especially from Runner JMA and, of course, Cover Killer Nation, the man. Shoutouts to those guys. Also, shoutouts to Mr. Cannibal Spork and Absent Productions. You guys are cool shit. So yeah, before I get to my top 20, I'm going to do my honorable mentions. Winds of Plagues Against the World. Friends of those guys. I like the album, just not as good as their previous two. In Flames, Sounds of a Playground Fading. Huge step up from A Sense of Purpose, but didn't quite make my top 20. Iced Earth, Dystopia, mainly because I'm just getting used to Stu Block's vocals after Matt Barlow left. I mean, yeah, Matt Barlow was a great vocalist, but I'm just getting used to Stu Block, even though I knew he was going to be a good one anyway, since he's in Into Eternity. And then Septic Flesh's new one. It's a pretty damn good album. I was impressed, but it's just not going to make my top 20. Yeah, so let's get on with the top 20. Number 20, Amon Amarth, Surtur Rising. This was probably the best thing I've ever heard from this band yet. Straight kick to the face. War of the Gods, great way to start off the album. My favorite, probably my favorite track on this album would have to be Live Without Regrets. Number 19, Straight Line Stitch, Fight of Our Lives. I really enjoyed this album. I got into these guys like late last year. Actually, no, earlier this year, and then I went out and bought this album, and I was pretty impressed by them, because honestly, to me, they sound like a female-fronted version of Hatebreed to me. I saw these guys live at Mayhem Fest. They were awesome. I met their singer, Alexis. She's one of the nicest people I've ever met. But all in all, it's a pretty good album. You should check it out if you like the band. Number 18, Double Driver. Now, this was the first album of the entire year that really kicked my ass. It's a pretty damn heavy album. I thought they stepped up their game a lot from Pray for Villains, because honestly that's my least favorite Double Driver album, Pray for Villains. Dez's vocals are brutal. The drums have been stepped up big time by Mr. Berkland. Sorry. Mike Spreitzer's guitar playing really stepped up in his leads. It's just a straight kick to the balls the entire way through. I can't name one bad song off that album. Number 17, Fleshgod Apocalypse, Agony. First time I ever heard this band was like, how the hell are they playing like this? I mean, it's just ridiculously fast and technical. But with each listen, it kind of got a little repetitive for me, but it made my top 20. To me, they sounded like Dimmu Borgir and Behemoth had a baby on steroids. The Violation would probably have to be my favorite song. The Betrayal was a damn good song too. That's also one of my favorites. Number 16, Revocation, Chaos of Forms. First thrash metal album to make it onto this list. And there's about 4 thrash metal albums that have made it onto this list. This album, I just was curious to buy. People were telling me that the new Revocation was good, so I went out and bought the album, and turned out I actually really liked it. Actually, I have it right here. Also, I have the other two albums that I just mentioned, Straight Line Stitch and Double Driver. Actually, Mike Spreitzer signed it if you can't see it. And then here's the new Revocation album. I really like this album. Straight up thrash. It's kind of like technical thrash death metal, if you want to say. Really good album, and some of these albums that I'm going to put on my list I don't have copies of, because I did radio and stuff, so I got some for free. Number 15, Havoc, Time Is Up. Another thrash metal band. This band sounded like Slayer, Death, and Megadeth kind of had a threesome, and that was the end result. The speed reminds me of Slayer, vocals remind me of Chuck Schuldiner, and the guitar work reminds me of Megadeth just a little bit. Honestly, they're the best. In current age of thrash metal, they're, in my opinion, the best band out of all the current age thrash metal bands. along with like Evil, Toxic Holocaust, and of course Revocation. Number 14, Chimera, The Age of Hell. This album really took me by surprise. This is their first album without Jim LaMarca or Chris Bacuza, and of course their second album without Anders Herrig. This is after they left. This was before they got the current lineup that they currently have right now. All in all, this is a really good album. I was really shocked. I really liked this album. It was a big step up from their last album, The Infection. The guy who played drums on the album was actually their producer, Ben. He's a really killer drummer, and here's the album right here. A couple guest spots featured Phil Bozeman on Born in Blood. He did some pretty brutal vocal work on that, and Emil Wurzler of Doth played a really killer guitar solo on the last song, which was, I believe, if I can find it on here, it is Samsara. An awesome instrumental song. Number 13, Dream Theater, A Dramatic Turn of Events. I really like this album. Very progressive and beautiful. First album without Mike Portnoy, and honestly, I didn't think it would be as good without him, but since they got Mike Mangini, in my opinion, probably the fastest drummer I've ever heard because of his hands, he's ridiculously fast, brought his own flavor to it, and hell, they made a really great album. Number 12. Where is it? In Waves by Trivium. Now, some people who actually know me would think that I'd put Trivium higher on my list. I would if this album was a little better than it came out to be. But I will say there are some improvements on here. Some of the drum work was pretty impressive. Their new drummer Nick Augusto, who I'm friends with, he's really solid. He's ridiculous. First time I saw him, I was impressed. This is when he was filling in at the time. Matt Heafy's vocals have gotten much better since Shogun, especially his cleans. His clean vocals are superb. Bar none, the best clean vocals I've probably heard all year. Out of a metal band. Number 11, Times of Grace, Hymn of a Broken Man. This was, to me, the first really great album to come out in 2011. This came out back in January, I believe. Jesse Leach, formerly of Killswitch Engage, and Adam D of Killswitch Engage made this album, and I was completely blown away by it. I mean, people were telling me about this album, and I finally went out and bought it, and I was just like, wow, this is a really good album. Number 10. We're in the top 10 now. Obscura, Omnivium. Man, technical death metal. Never wants to go away, and it never will. Really good album. It's straight up brutal, technical, it's really good. Hannes Grossman, formerly of Necrophagist, is in this band. If I listened to this album even more than I did, it would probably be much higher up on my list, maybe even make the top 5. All in all, it's a very good album. I really liked it. Number 9, Arch Enemy, Chaos Legions. This, in my opinion, is tied for the best Angelo Gasso era album, along with, I'd have to say, it's tied between this and Doomsday Machine for me. Arch Enemy, they stepped up their game on this one compared to their last album, Rise of the Tyrant, which is also a good album, but I can't name one bad song from them, or album. Amott Brothers, they stepped up their melodic guitar playing, spot on like usual. Angela's vocals have gotten better. You can also hear the bass very well in this album from Shirley. And Daniel Erlandson, one of my favorite drummers of all time, he really stepped up his game on this album with his drumming. I think it's the best I've ever heard come out of him. Number 8, Anthrax, Worship Music. Now this marks the return of Joey Belladonna as the Anthrax vocalist, because he's been out of the band for quite some time. And this is their first album with Joey Belladonna since Persistence of Time, which came out in the early 90s, I believe. Starts off really nice with the instrumental song Worship, and then it kicks right into Earth on Hell, and then we all know the song, the two singles, The Devil You Know and Fight Until You Can't, which I think are really awesome songs. Fight Until You Can't probably sounds like the most old school Anthrax song. It's a very good album. You should check it out if you're a big Anthrax fan. Also, this is the third thrash metal album to make it on my list. Number 7, All Shall Perish. This is Where It Ends. I was extremely impressed with this album. I had actually, oh wait, I forgot to show you the Anthrax album. And, Arch Enemy. Where's Times of Grace? I'm fidgeting around with my albums. Yeah. Alright, where's the, All Shall Perish. This is Where It Ends. Yes, I got it signed by the band when I saw them back in July. Awesome dudes. I got to hang out with them and whatnot. Also, okay, back to the album. This is Where It Ends, to me, was a big step up to Awaken the Dreamers. It's not as there's no proggy interludes, none of that stuff. I was extremely impressed by Eddie Hermita's vocals on this, and this album was probably the heaviest album I've heard all year. The guitar tones are heavy. I mean, there's 4 songs in there that feature 8-string guitars, and it's very audible and crisp. Adam Pierce, the new drummer, he was a fantastic replacement for Matt, their original drummer. Francesco Artisato, amazing guitar player. You should check that guy out. He shreds. Yeah, all in all, this is a pretty good album. The standout track for me would have to be Spineless, Divine Illusion, the opening track, and Path Will Haunt Us Both, and In This Life of Pain, which is also my favorite song on the album. Number 6, another signed CD, Unearth, Darkness in the Light. This album is probably the best metalcore album I've heard in years. All in all, this is, I mean, it features, they didn't have a drummer at the time, so they had Justin Foley from Killswitch Engage play the drums, and he absolutely blew me away with his drumming. This is probably the best drum work I've heard him do out of Killswitch Engage. The guitar work is ridiculous. Buzz and Ken really stepped up, and Ken Susi finally brought back his clean vocals like he did on the Oncoming Storm. Yeah, it's definitely a big kick to the face, especially from Watch It Burn, and then Equinox in the middle, which is like a calming song, but then it just builds up and then it just goes right back into the album, which I think is genius. Number 5, Black Dahlia Murder, Ritual. This band keeps impressing me with every release. Like they just keep getting better and better for me. Standout track on this album would have to be Den of the Picarist and Malenchantments of the Necrosphere. Those ones are definitely the standout ones for me. Den of the Picarist starts off with a little drum thrash beat, and then you hear Bart, the bass player, doing a little bass solo, which is really cool. I like this album a lot. It was definitely a step up from Deflorate, which I wasn't expecting at all. Number 4, Megadeth, 13. This is coming from Thrash Metal Legends. It's not as much of a thrash metal album as Endgame was, but it's a very solid release. I really enjoyed this album. Sudden Death and Never Dead were some pretty good thrash metal songs. Sudden Death came out on the last Guitar Hero game that came out more than a year ago, which I loved, but they did a little revamping on that with the guitar work. They also redid songs. I think Millennium of the Blind was one of them. New World Order, which was originally a demo on the Hidden Treasures CD, I believe, and they did a little redone version of Black Swan. They kind of changed it a little bit compared to the version that's on United Abominations. It was a bonus track then. All in all, I really like this album. I've always loved Megadeth, always will. Number 3, Machine Head, Unto the Locust. Now, this was a very anticipated album for 2011. Mainly being because we were expecting seeing if they would be able to top their previous album, The Blackening, which in my opinion was the best album in metal to come out in the last 10 years or so. Really awesome. They're still kicking it. They're in their prime right now. I can't get enough of this album. It's really good. Oh, I have it right here, and I also forgot about the new Megadeth. Number 2. Where's that album? Oh, yes. Number 2, Mastodon, The Hunter. Now, this album, I was not expecting this to be as good as it was. I honestly enjoyed this more than Crack the Skye, although I loved that album. It was probably the best album of 2009 as far as I'm concerned. Very good album. Curl the Burl. People were questioning it. I really like that. I love some of the song titles were just ridiculous. Like Octopus Has No Friends. Let's see what else. Dry Bone Valley. Bedazzled Fingernails. All good songs. My favorite song on this album would have to be Blasteroid, which is probably the shortest song, if I'm not mistaken. I wish it was longer. That's the only complaint I have about this album. But all in all, it's a very good record. Now, what could possibly be the #1 album for me this year? That would be this album, The Discovery by Born of Osiris. This album was probably the first album all year that made me nearly shit my pants. It was a straight kick to the freaking stomach. Brutal. I mean, I heard a few songs like Follow the Signs and Recreate before the album came out, but as soon as I heard the rest of it, it was just really great. I mean, you think that, oh, it's got 15 songs, it's probably gonna suck, right? With Born of Osiris, not even a chance. Like, I can't get enough of this album. I keep listening to it and listening to it and listening to it, and I just keep getting blown and blown away each time I listen to it, because it's a masterpiece as far as I'm concerned. So I have to give those guys some props. Saw them over the summer. They were awesome. Met Lee and Cam, the drummer. Awesome guys. I mean, the drums are ridiculous. The guitar work is bar none the best I've heard all year. And the vocals, keyboards, bass, everything just sounds good on this album. It's just a perfect album for me. Yeah, I'd have to say that's probably my favorite album of this entire year. So yeah, just to conclude that, I hope to do some more album reviews in the next year. There's some pretty good stuff to look out for next year, like Lamb of God, Gojira, Meshuggah, Testament, many other freaking bands that are coming out next year. Oh, and yeah, it's just gonna be 2012 is gonna be one hell of a year. So keep it metal. I'll see you guys later.